Japan. Now, when you heard that word, what was the first thing that came to your mind? It could be Japanese landscapes like Mount Fuji or cherry blossoms. It could be Japanese food like sushi, ramen, or if you're into histories, it could be like Japanese castles or samurais or ninjas and stuff like that. Or if you are more focused on subcultures, it could be animes, mangas, or other kawaii side of Japanese cultures. And if those things were indeed the first things that came to your mind, well, that's very understandable because there have been so much focus and attention on those things, especially after the internet came along. There was huge boom on anime and manga and some Japan related memes. And all of those things leads us to today. Today, it's not very hard to find something Japan related, whether it is on SNS or in real world streets. And especially if you're on YouTube, there's so many influencers and YouTubers talking about how Japan is cool, but they are usually from the perspective of tourists. Where the thing is, if you're a tourist, you're gonna be here for a very limited amount of time, maybe a couple of months max. But if you start living in Japan, you'd find that there are so many problems and issues that are not talked about enough. And those problems are actually something I want to talk about on this channel. So, if you are interested in Japan as a country and looking for videos you can learn some serious stuff rather than kawaiified, gentrified things, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting on my videos. Thank you. Okay, so for this very first video on my channel, I chose a topic that interests many people today: same-sex marriage in Japan. Now, as of 2024, Japanese government and Japanese law does not recognize same-sex marriages. While it is different from being completely legal, like in some countries, still gay couples are not protected the same way hetero couples are protected. So, how did we reach this point? Well, first of all, when we hear about gay marriage being not legal in certain country or certain parts of world, oftentimes it has something to do with religion. Because in Islam and Christianity, two of the biggest worldwide religion, being gay is a sin. But as for Japan, that is not the case. Take a look at this chart. This is made based on survey conducted by Japanese government, published in 2023. As you can see here, around 95% of Japanese population is either Shintoist or Buddhist. And in both religions, there are no rules against same-sex relationships. As a matter of fact, a Shinto shrine in Kobe held a ceremony for a gay couple in 2023. Jinja Honcho, or Association of Shinto Shrines of Japan, which is an umbrella organization of Shintoism, stated, quote, "There is no definitive denial or approval of same-sex marriage in the school of Shintoism," essentially saying it is up to each shrine to make decisions on the matter. And as for Buddhism, not only some temples do hold ceremony for same-sex couples today, there have been so many stories telling monks having romantic relationships for ages. You see, in ancient times, having women in Buddhist temple was usually a taboo because women were considered stained and not pure. So women had their own temples governed by nuns. So within those temples where women are forbidden and having relationships with women were considered unholy, same-sex relationships between monks were normalized. Now, it could happen in all ranks, but prominent ones were between high-ranking monks and their young apprentices. Those apprentices were called chigo, which literally means child or kid. To be a chigo, you have to be good looking, and of course, some of them were children of aristocrats and powerful warlords. Because being chigo and serving famous monks and learning from them were considered very honorable. This custom appeared around Heian period but remained very popular, and it was oftentimes depicted in romantic novels up until the 17th century. By the way, this kind of relationships were not limited to just monks. It was very common for bushi, samurai, and daimyos to have young boys as servants. Those servants helped their masters in war as well as everyday lives. So it wasn't uncommon for them to develop deeper relationships. Matter of fact, some of the most famous and powerful daimyos, warlords, and samurais very openly had relationships with other men. The most famous instances are as follows. Yorinaga Fujiwara, aka Aksafu or Evil Minister of Left. Born in the most powerful family at the time, Fujiwara family, he is famous for rising to the top of the government at the time. He is also known for his diary, Taiki. In this diary, he left extremely detailed depiction of his feelings and tumultuous romance life with at least 7 men while having a wife with 4 kids. Nobunaga Oda, also known as the Demon King. He is probably most famous for being one of the most powerful warlords around the 16th century. He is also considered as the very first person to unify Japanese mainland, which has been divided by numerous warlords for centuries. He is known for many eccentric stories, and one of them is his relationship with his royal servant. His name was Naritoshi Mori or Ranmaru Mori. There have been so many stories and plays written on this relationship. While some historians claim that there is no concrete evidence for them being romantically engaged, there is no doubt that those two were still in very close terms. Shingen Takeda, aka Tiger of Kai. He was a longtime friend slash rival of Nobunaga. He was also one of the most powerful daimyo slash warlords at the time. He is known for his bravery and exceptional military success, but he had also written many letters across his life. One of them is a love letter to his servant Masanobu Kosaka. In this letter, he explains how he hadn't cheated on Masanobu over other men, explaining in detail how he was hitting on other men but ultimately turned down, and he didn't sleep with him. It is pretty clear that he was in love with Masanobu. These were only the very famous ones, so it's pretty safe to say that within daimyo, samurai, and bushi culture, same-sex relationships was very prevalent. Okay, so far I have only talked about people with high social ranking status, like monks and warlords. What about normal citizens? To know that, we have to look into a period called Edo period. This period started when war-torn Japan finally unified under the ruler called shogun. And during this period, people enjoyed their peace and citizens finally had the luxury of enjoying various cultural entertainment. One of them was kabuki, a traditional Japanese play. There were young male actors who specifically played female characters. they were called onnagata, which is written as female shape in kanji. They were extremely popular within men and women alike. There were also very colorful paintings called ukiyo-e. They were made available for normal citizens because they could produce in a mass with newly developed printing technique. Now, ukiyo-e featured many things, but there were very popular genre called shunga. Shun means spring, but it can also mean something erotic. Ga means printings and drawings. In short, it was the first poem made available for everyone. A lot of them were poems for hetero men, but there was of course gay porn, and some of them even featured imaginary monsters. No wonder we have all hentai culture today. Anyway, so far everything looks very open to same-sex relationships. So what changed it? Well, you see, the Edo period lasted for 265 years from 17th century to 19th century, and we spent a good chunk of that period isolating ourselves from the rest of the world. Of course, there were some cultural exchanges and trading, but we were pretty much oblivious to global events. And unfortunately, while our technology didn't see much progress, world had changed dramatically around this period. One of the most significant events was the invention of steam engine in early 18th century. It led the world to industrial revolution. Now Western countries were heading towards military expansion, and there were rapid rise of colonialism and imperialism. So when Japanese government at the time were forced to open its port, they realized how much Japan had been left behind. And of course, the biggest fear for Japanese governments at the time was Japan ending up just like Chinese Qin dynasty. Japan concluded that they needed a rapid modernization, so a lot of things were considered unsophisticated things from the past, and they have to abolish those things to catch up with Western countries. So we had imported so many goods, cultures, and technologies. During that process, we saw some differences between Japanese society and Christianity-based Western society. Then we were introduced to an idea that sodomy was a sin for the first time. In 1872, a law prohibiting sodomy came to its effect, marking first nationwide ban on sodomy. However, it was not included when Japanese government made criminal law in 1880. Even though samurai class was abolished, gay culture survived, finding new grounds in new elites. A new Japanese military and dormitories of universities and colleges provided unique environment where same-sex relationships were allowed. It was pretty normal within the Japanese military up until World War II. Even though we don't have much record of gays within the Imperial Army at the time, it is pretty safe to assume any kind of diversion from what considered to be a norm was not allowed, since we were ally of Nazis and we surely had our share of eugenics. And in eugenics, gays and disabled were considered less of a human. Anyway, after the World War II, gay communities and their culture came back. However, there were certainly some social stigmas and prejudices around them, so they remained as a closed community. After the war, Japanese culture in general was strongly influenced by America, and gay liberation movement was not the exception. So we basically followed the footsteps of America on this matter. Moving fast forward, In 1993, Japanese Ministry of Education, Science, Sports and Culture unlisted gay from sexual diversion. Following this government's shift on its position, Japanese society started accepting the sexual minorities. In a survey conducted in 2005, about 14% of Japanese approved same-sex relationships, and that number only continued to grow, especially among young people. And as sexual minorities became known to the public, one of the most debated topics was same-sex marriage. According to a survey conducted in 2023, about 68% of Japanese think such marriage should be allowed, which is actually high in numbers than the US 63%. So overwhelming majority, especially young people, think those marriage should be allowed. However, government official position is that marriage is only between men and women. So what does the actual law say about marriage? The Article 24 of Constitution of Japan says marriage shall be based only on the mutual consent of both sexes and it shall be maintained through mutual cooperation with the equal rights of husband and wife as a basis. Some people used to argue that choices of words such as both sexes and husband and wife make it clear that marriage is only for men and women. However, some law specialists and scholars have long argued that it wasn't intended to limit marriage to men and women. Considering it was introduced in 1946, it is more likely that lawmakers at the time were not aware of the concept of same-sex marriages, and Japanese government agreed that this article can't be a legal basis of their argument. So it's not like our law is against same-sex marriage. Rather, there is a strong argument that if we don't recognize same-sex marriages, that is against the Constitution, because Article 14 states that there should be no discrimination based on individuals' background, including sex. And even though phrases like wife and husband appear in some other laws regarding marriages, it is not that hard of a process to adjust those words, since revising those laws are less complicated than revising the constitution. So why Japanese government still doesn't act? In 2018, government stated that this issue, meaning same-sex marriages, could affect the very foundation of families across Japan, and they have to be very careful about the issue. Similar statements are made by people from Liberal Democratic Party, a major conservative party currently leading the government. In 2023, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida stated that it will change the values and how people see a family, and it will change the society. Just a few days later, his secretary stated that I hate even just seeing them, meaning sexual minorities, and I'd hate it if they were in my neighborhood. Even though this secretary was punished after this remark, it was a clear indicator on how members of this ruling party think. Matter of fact, some of the politicians from the party are even more explicit, and they often talk about how Japanese traditional values on families will be destroyed if they recognize same-sex marriages. And as you can see here, things have been like this for years. And sexual minorities and their allies have fed up with this situation. So in 2019, Marriage for All Japan movement started. It was a first of its kind, challenging the current government's position by starting multiple lawsuits across the country. As of August 2024, out of 6 rulings of local courts and 1 in High Court, 6 rulings stated that current condition is either unconstitutional or state of unconstitutional. And these lawsuits are ongoing right now, with multiple appeals still in process. Japanese government so far only commented on those rulings as "we will keep closely watching," indicating that they are not planning to act anytime soon. However, there is no doubt that each of those lawsuits will surely apply pressures on the government. I'll put some links to the organization behind this movement so you can donate and support them if you'd like. Okay, now we have looked into how Japanese society historically treated same-sex relationships in general and where we are right now and how we are trying to make things right for sexual minorities. I'll try to make more videos on social issues in Japan. So if you liked this video, please show your support in likes, comments, and subscribes. Thank you for watching this and see you in next video.